KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. It's time for the Front Stretch, brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com.
Well, thank you for joining us on another edition of the Front Stretch here on AM 590. Another NASCAR season is about to wrap up in just a few hours, and I think we're going to have our first-time champion in quite a while. 6 years, I believe. Jimmy won it for 5 years in a row, then Tony won it last year. And so Jimmy's first year would have been 05?
Something like that.
Yep, 05. So so it would be the first time in 6 years we've had a first-time champion. And obviously, don't know yet. Green flag hasn't flown, but I got a strong feeling since that 20-point advantage Brad Kozlowski has is going to hold up. But you never know, because last week at Phoenix we had a 27-point championship swing. So
yeah, didn't something happen last week in Phoenix?
Just not much, much. And I want to bring this up. Normally, we have a tough time filling an hour's worth of show with relevant content. I mean, we have no problem talking for an hour, but relevant content. I think we could do a 2 to 3 hour show today, just breaking down what happened at Phoenix and all of the implications and all of the different scenarios that happened. So how about we do this? We just get into it.
All right.
We just get it done. And we're joined in studio by a special guest today.
Luke Cochran.
We're excited to have you, Luke. Thank you so much for joining us. You are the owner and proprietor of Home Pride Stores, right?
Home Pride Companies.
Home Pride Companies. My mistake. Sorry about that. So, yeah, we brought Luke in tonight because we've talked all season long about sponsorship and how important it is. And, Luke, you're a big sponsor in the dirt track community around here. I know you sponsor Jack Dover.
Yeah.
And I know is there a couple more drivers you sponsor?
Helping Jesse Sabi out.
Okay, you're helping Jesse for a couple of races, right? And so I wanted to get your side of this whole thing because, I mean, let's face it, a lot happened at Phoenix on Sunday within the last 10 laps that could have big implications for 2013 and on. So it's going to be interesting to get your opinion of it as the guy who's writing a check to a driver to represent his company, basically.
Well, what you've seen at the end of the race at Phoenix was probably a textbook accounting of what not to do to please your sponsor.
Exactly. and I'm kind of curious, and we'll talk about it later. Are you talking about Jeff Gordon or are you talking about Clint Bowyer? So we'll get into that in just a little bit, but let's talk about what happened at Phoenix.
Hold on. What are you guys talking? You haven't broke down for me. I was watching the UFC fight and the NASCAR race turned on. I didn't see what happened.
I'm watching, yeah.
Are you serious?
I'm sitting there watching the race, and I get a text message from Andrew. What is going on right now?
That was pretty crazy.
So let's talk about the weekend to start off with. I was very surprised at the demeanor of the 48 team. For the first time in several weeks, they didn't get the pole. They didn't have the fastest car. And you kind of got to wondering, maybe they were behind a little bit on the 8 ball. Maybe they were starting to feel the pressure. This big whole thing with Jimmy Johnson, he's the 5-time champion. 5 in a row, never been done before. We talked about it last week. He's probably going to end up winning a couple more championships, and it's probably going to end up holding the title of most championships for a driver by the end of his career. And so with winning multiple championships, you've got a bit of a stigma that comes with you, and I don't think stigma is a good word, but there's some intimidation that comes with it, and you could kind of see he was starting to put the pressure on Brad Keselowski and Paul Wolfe, but it kind of felt like Keselowski and Wolfe in that 2 team turned it around in the 48 because they were making decisions that were kind of uncharacteristic of a guy who had the points lead. It almost kind of seemed like they were running, not necessarily running scared, but that they were they were keeping their eye on the 2 when typically they only have to worry about their stuff.
I think they were keeping their eye on the 2, but I no way in the world can you convince me that Knaus and Jimmy Johnson were worried, spooked, scared, nervous, or shaking in their boots.
It was a good race. All race long, they waited for that second groove to kind of make its way in so we could see some 2-wide racing. And it was really weird because truck race on Friday night, the last 10 laps, it kind of seemed to be getting there. So the Nationwide boys went out there, and girls, and they kind of tried to race that second line, but it went away. It went back to one groove racing. About halfway through the race, it came in. The Cup guys came out there, and girls came out there and raced. And same thing, it seemed to not stay after the race was over with from the previous night's racing, and it took a little bit more of working that groove in, but it finally did come around, and I have a completely different view of what happened with the 48 than I've heard all week long, and I'll just go out there. I mean, I'm not an expert by any means, but in no replay I saw did I see him have a already cut down tire when he hit the wall coming out of 4.
I agree.
I think Jimmy Johnson was running harder than he should have because Brad Kozlowski was trying to take the lead, and he's got Chad Knaus in a spotter in his ear going, buddy, you got to go. You got to go now. And they didn't have the best car. I think he hit the wall, and it blew the tire, and they blamed it on that. But I don't think in any means, I didn't.
When you see the end car, usually you can see a tire explode and the car dart to the right.
Yeah.
All I seen is it just,
It
he just
slowly made its way up the groove.
Just kind of drifted up.
Yeah. So I'm actually kind of excited somebody agrees with me. But either way, he hits the wall and destroys the side of that car and destroys the steering on the right side of that car, and they have to bring it back into the pits, and they're back there for 33 laps, getting it fixed and getting it back on the track. Now let's just get to what everyone has talked about all week long.
I'm waiting.
And I want to break down what happened step by step of what happened. The initial contact between Clint Bowyer and Jeff Gordon. Was that Clint driving too hard? Did he get loose?
The way I saw it, kind of the same with what happened to Jimmy, which I think something different might have happened with Jimmy. But all that happened was Bowyer, I think, just lightly pushed up the track. He was going to fuzz too hard to try to get past Jeff. I mean, that's every point he can get. Jimmy's out of the race. He's going to keep trying to get. And, man, he barely, you saw tire smoke because tire on tire. If the tire wouldn't have touched the other tire, you wouldn't have saw any tire smoke.
Yeah.
So it was such a light hit. It didn't even make Jeff squirrely whatsoever, if you ask me.
And then after that, when Bowyer gets around him, doesn't really get around him, but Gordon then comes down and tries to wreck Bowyer immediately after the initial contact and fails and ends up hitting the wall.
Yeah.
And that kind of seemed to exacerbate the situation because he was trying to and I think Gordon right at that moment had justification because he said, the guy has wrecked me 5 times and I'm just sick of it. At that point in time, I had absolutely no problem with what Gordon had done. If he would have pulled the car off the track, gone into the pits, and then started a brawl after the race, I would not have had a problem with any of this. But he goes after Bowyer, and I'm going to make comparisons here, a lot like Kyle Busch went after Ron Hornaday a year ago in Texas. Now, there is some similarities to it, and there's some differences to it, and we're going to break that down coming up in a little bit. But this was an intent and malicious attack, right? Anybody,
I would agree with that.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't get to see the race. So the initial contact prior to the big one that we're getting ready to talk about, I didn't get to see that. All I was told is there was a little bit of contact, nothing out of the ordinary for a NASCAR race.
So after Bowyer gets gone and Gordon collects himself out of the wall, he takes a couple of laps around and he's not able to keep pace. And you hear the announcers say, NASCAR has given Gordon the black flag to pull it off the track. At that time, they're about a half a turn away from each other. Bowyer has now caught back up to Gordon because Gordon's kind of been waiting for him. And you hear on the radio chatter later, postmortem after everything had happened, you can hear the radio chatter. Gordon said, I'm going to get him. I'm coming to get him. Where is that expletive? I mean, very dirty language this guy was having going on his radio. And so Gordon waits for him. Bowyer's trying to get around him, and Gordon just flat out wrecks him. Ends up collecting Joey Logano in the process and Eric Almirola in the process. And it is scary how close he came to getting Keselowski. And I say scary because I don't want the championship to come down to an accidental collection in an accident, if that makes any sense.
Oh, who does? I mean, you want something to happen like what happened at Homestead last year, which was probably the greatest thing that ever could have happened for NASCAR.
Yeah.
Which was a race for the champion. That's the greatest race for a championship I've ever seen in racing.
I would have to agree with that. I don't think we'll ever see that again in our lifetime.
I think had Johnson not had that accident, I think we were definitely gearing up for it because Kozlowski had the better car all day long. Now, it's tough to say what Johnson could have done and what Knaus could have done with 1 or 2 more stops. They seem to be able to pull that out with the last stop, be able to make the right adjustments to be able to get up there and get it close. Going into the race, Johnson had a 7-point lead. Leaving, it's a completely different story, but you never know what could have happened, but it seemed like Kozlowski was going to be gaining several points on Johnson. I think Kozlowski could have won that race. I think after Johnson wrecked, he kind of backed up a little bit and was happy with where he was running. But anyways, let's get back to the situation. So Gordon and Bowyer wreck and collect Logano and Almirola. Gordon then pulls it down to the pits, we've got a caution out because there's so much debris on the track, and he's out of the car. Then Bowyer's crew attacks him. It was a mobbing.
It was a full-on MMA fight is what it was.
And they waylaid. And, you saw bloody noses, bloody lips, black eyes. There was fists flying. I mean, it was flat-out fists. It was like Andrew just joked. He was watching a UFC fight and a race broke out. I mean, that's what it was. I want to ask you guys really simply. I know we all love drama in this sport, but did Bowyer's crew put a black eye on NASCAR?
No, I think they needed it. They needed something.
Yeah.
I think what happened was not good, but the end result of what happened helped the sport in the fact that we all knew Johnson and Keselowski are coming down to the last race, Homestead. That was the big story. Who's going to win the race? Last year, Luke, you said it best. Last year was probably the best finish ever in the history of NASCAR. When you have a pinnacle like that and you go into the next year and your favorite driver, if it's Kozlowski, is liable to win it by 5 points, where's the magic from last year when you're going to win by 3 to 5 points? Now, is it right for Gordon and Bowyer's crew to do what they did? No. Is it wrong what Gordon did? Absolutely. But now, because of all this drama, how many people are seriously going to tune in to the Homestead race to see if, to quote Bowyer almost, I got nothing to lose. Maybe I'll retaliate. Now, you and I, before we went to Air Day, were fighting about this. I could see Bowyer doing it. Most people would say no. He's right. What does he have to lose? So
he has a lot to lose.
I think it shows a lot of support and pride that the crews have. I mean, they work on that car. They wanted to finish third. They want to run good too. I think that's pretty cool that the crew took a step in and said, you know what, we work on this car every single week, and it's coming to the end. That's not just the owner and the driver. We're showing the crews have as much heart as the driver does. I thought that was pretty cool myself.
This was like a bench clearing moment in baseball.
Absolutely. When everybody's all in.
When the guy's up at the plate and he gets beamed on purpose, it's not just between the pitcher and the batter. It's the whole team's. The bench is clear and everybody just goes at it. I mean, this is. I think you're absolutely right, Andrew. This just goes to show you how much heart even the jack man, the tire man, the guy who checks the tire pressures, the guy who helps to tweak the setup in the garage, how much pride they have in these cars and how much is on the line for these guys week in and week out. When we come back, I want to talk to Luke Cochran, who is our guest host today, about the implications for 5 Hour Energy and DuPont and AARP as far as these two involved in the situation. We'll be right back. This is The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is The Front Stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to The Front Stretch. We appreciate you sticking with us. We're into Turn 2, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Turn 2 brought to you by the Auto Connection in Lincoln, 21st and P Street. Get your car serviced and in full working order today. I actually learned something new about my truck this weekend. The massive temperature shift between Saturday and Sunday, my tire pressure dropped about 10 pounds. And I didn't take it to Auto Connection to put air in it, but I didn't realize that your tire pressure could swing that much.
100%. 100%.
I found out that, yes, it can. So I had to put about 10 pounds.
I didn't even know that.
I didn't put any wedge in the car, just about 10 pounds of pressure and went on down the road.
You don't have nitrogen in your tires?
I don't know. I don't know if they put nitrogen in it from the factory, but now it's got a little nitrogen and oxygen mixture if it does, which I've heard is just really, really bad to do. But anyways, get to the Auto Connection in Lincoln. Let Kevin and all the guys down there at 21st and P Street take care of your automobile. They'll hook it up to their diagnostic machines. They'll make sure you're in full working order because nobody wants to be broke down on the side of the road because it never happens on a day like Saturday. It happens like a day on Sunday when it was cold, it was windy, there was no sun, and you're stuck on the side of the road freezing your butt off. Get to the Auto Connection in Lincoln, 21st and P Street, and autorepairlincolnne.com is the website you can go to. Get your car serviced today. Make sure it's in full working order. I talked about it as we left the break last turn, and I want to talk about it. Let's kick it off right. Luke, as a sponsor of dirt track drivers in the area, I want you to put the sponsor cap on. Are you embarrassed today, if you're a 5 Hour Energy company, are you embarrassed by Clint Bowyer's crew action and what unfolded? Are you having a conversation with them later and say, listen, we don't necessarily want to be associated with a team that will act like a bunch of goons? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my personal opinion, of course, this is going to come from the standpoint of being a former competitive racer myself. I'm probably more upset with AARP and what Jeff Gordon did than I am with 5 Hour Energy.
Okay.
And my thinking behind that is, as a sponsor, I would, you always want your product to be portrayed in a good light. I don't see what Clint Bowyer's crew or Clint Bowyer did that day as anything other than, protecting and a show of loyalty and teamwork. Anybody else
find it kind of ironic that AARP got into a fight with 5 Hour Energy?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay, just want to throw it out there. I'm sorry. Go on, Luke.
I watched an interview prior to, where they had the Chase guys in there and they were talking about stuff, and there was some good-natured ribbing. Of course, I don't know how much good-natured ribbing there's going to be between Jeff and Clint at this point in time, but obviously Jeff's the oldest of the group that are in the Chase, and it's sponsored by AARP, and I'm sure Clint uses 5 Hour Energy. Probably Jeff uses AARP now, too.
You say as AARP, you would have more of an issue with Jeff than you would Bowyer.
He potentially, if he would have taken Kozlowski out along with Logano, who did nothing, in his attempt to potentially get back at Bowyer, look at the ramifications of what that would have done to the points at this juncture. When you ruin somebody else's chance of winning a championship when it's very, very difficult, when you're a past champion yourself, I think he tarnished his own reputation and his own past championships.
We heard this a lot last year with Kyle Busch and his issues at Texas, and when he got suspended, he got sat down. He pretty much had to go up to Mars M&M's and sit down with the corporates and say, listen, this won't happen again. Do you think there's any of those conversations going on between AARP and Hendrick Motorsports?
There would be if I was something to do with AARP.
Yeah.
The reason they would choose Jeff Gordon to represent them is because, potentially he's always been pretty much a class act. And I've not been a great fan of his, but potentially, you would think you would be safe for him not to do something such as that. I mean, the worst, my greatest fear in that kind of a situation is somebody getting injured. What if he had hurt Clint? What if they'd hurt Joey Logano?
Yeah.
That's the worst part of something like that, and that's a lot of money. That's we're talking $1 million race cars, and it just was unacceptable to me.
Let's talk about the penalties that were levied on Monday. Something I'd also never seen NASCAR do was come out with fines on Monday. Typically, they wait till Tuesday when they have time to analyze everything and fully digest it, but they came right out, fined Jeff Gordon $100,000 and docked him 25 championship driver points. We had the brief conversation about it. Should he have been suspended? Buddy?
I absolutely agree. It's one thing...
Should he have been suspended?
Yes, he should be suspended for the Homestead race. And the reason why I say that is, whether it be at the NASCAR level or even at the dirt track level, if we're upset with you, after the A feature at NASCAR, we're going to tag in the rear bumper. We're going to let you know, hey, I'm not real happy. We might pass you, give you the bird or something like that. But when you take it to a new level like this and you purposely turn a guy into the wall at 150 to 200 mile an hour, you're potentially talking, some serious bodily harm there. That is no different in my eyes than a guy literally walking down the street with a 9mm and potentially shooting you. I mean, it's an assault with a deadly weapon. At that point, it crossed the line, and to me, he should have been parked for that.
Andrew?
I agree. I think he should be parked for a couple reasons. First off, because that's just a terrible class act right there. And another reason, if I was NASCAR, I'd park him just because I don't think Clint will stoop to his level. But if Clint decided, you know what, screw it, I'm going to take him out, it could take Keselowski out. It could have took Jimmy out if he's leading the points. And, I mean, that's what I'd have just said, all right, let's just split these two up. Jeff, you're an idiot. You're going to have to sit out this last race. He ain't going to gain nothing in the points. He already lost too much now for losing your points. Wait till next year and regain yourself. That's what I'd have done.
Luke?
I think they should have parked him, absolutely. It was uncalled for. I feel NASCAR's very good at levying penalties for things that are done wrong on the racetrack. And had there been something that Bowyer done, I've replayed the end of that race and that particular episode a number of times to just kind of get a little insight on my own, so I could make an educated call on it. Mm-hmm. And I don't see anything but racing. Right. I see racing. I see Jeff Gordon trying to spin Clint Bowyer. He didn't get it done. He ended up crashing himself in the process. They were claiming that Bowyer had cut his left rear tire down. I didn't see that either. Yeah. And to retaliate in the manner that he did, and taking Logano and nearly taking Kozlowski out, that in itself should just park him. I mean, and he's a past champion, 4-time champion. He's representing NASCAR as a NASCAR champion. You got to show more than that.
I'm going to be the minority in the group, and I'm going to say I think their fine was right, spot on. I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd have suspended him, but I'm not. On the same token, I'm not surprised that they didn't suspend him. And here's the reason why. We talked about it before the show. Carl Edwards, when he spun Keselowski and sent him flipping through the front stretch, and there's been incidences all throughout NASCAR of drivers retaliating on another one. I think you've got to take each one case by case. I think Kyle Busch was suspended after Texas because Kyle Busch has a habit and has a history. He's got a rap sheet. He's been in issues with NASCAR before, and he was on probation at the time. So I think it was easy for NASCAR to sit him and say, you're going to think about this before you get much more out of control. I think everybody was spot on as far as it was uncalled for, it was unprofessional, it was unlike a former champion, but it's Gordon who doesn't have a history of this. And so I think NASCAR said, Jeff's mature enough, he's smart enough, he's been doing this long enough to understand he went too far. We don't need to sit him and let him think about it like we had to have Kyle sit and think about it. So that's the reason why I don't think NASCAR should have suspended him. I think they were right on with their $100,000 fine and 25 championship points. Brian Patty, crew chief for the 15 car, was found in violation. He was fined $25,000 and placed on probation until December 31st. He was found in violation of basically it's you're the captain of your ship and you're responsible for these guys. So NASCAR fined him for not keeping the crew better under control. An odd one that came out, and this is one that, Andrew, I want to talk to you specifically about. Brad Keselowski fined $25,000 and placed on probation for having an unapproved electronic item in the car.
Good.
This is kind of a double-edged sword.
You don't carry a cell phone, Andrew, in your car?
Nope.
NASCAR, after the Daytona 500, everyone saw this, where Brad Keselowski gained 1 million followers following that race because he was tweeting on the backstretch. Everyone can agree that was great for NASCAR. I mean, it got NASCAR involved in the social media world like nobody else has ever been able to do. Well, there was an in-car clip while they were under the red flag of Brad sitting there tweeting. And apparently, the way the story goes, and I've heard about it, after Daytona 500, several teams expressed concern that a driver could use the phone or some sort of electronic communication device to send information back to the pit crew, not through the radios, so that they could have some sort of level of secrecy. And NASCAR has said that they don't want drivers to be any part of that, so they have banned all electronic equipment. $25,000, though.
That's chump change for a NASCAR driver.
No,
yes,
it's chump change, but think about this. $25,000. Dan, if you got fined $25,000 for carrying a cell phone in your Ranger, what kind of a message would that send to you?
I would not be having a cell phone in my Ranger ever again. Regardless if he can afford it or not, that's a hell of a fine.
Well, do they have a specific rule that states
I don't believe
that you
should
can't
have
have a cell phone?
They do, and if you would like me to read it to you, I can.
Well,
It's pretty insane. It's Section 12-1 and 20-6.7a. Drivers are not permitted to carry onboard computers, automated electronic recording devices, they go through this litany of, basically it doesn't say you can't have a cell phone. It says you can't have a microprocessor, a digital readout gauge, a recording device, a microprocessor, a power connector. It goes through a litany of electronic devices that cell phones do fall under. So, yes, they do have something on the books.
Well, they needed to be specific about it. Because everybody knew Keselowski had a phone in his car at Daytona. if they didn't want anybody to have a cell phone in their car again. I mean, it was news to me. I read the fine and thought, wow, they must have made a rule I didn't know about.
And there is some back kind of questioning. Did Brad Keselowski actually get in trouble for the phone, or did they use that $25,000 fine to also scold him for this recording? I want to play this. This is his post-race comments in the media center, and
it could be mostly bleeps, right?
Thankfully, we were able to bleep it out.
What most offended you about what happened out there? But what happened before the with Jimmy and Jeff?
What
and
offends
his crew?
me is the double standard that I spent a whole week being bashed by a half a dozen drivers about racing hard at Texas and how I'm out of control and have a death wish, and then I see bull like that. That's all you can call that. And these guys just tried to kill each other. You race hard, and I get called a for racing hard, and called with a death wish, and I see like that, and it just pisses me off. I'm not yelling at you, Dave, but it's just ridiculous, and they should be ashamed.
I'd like to see Tony Stewart or Jimmy Spencer come out and just whip his ass. I'd love to see it.
You know, you talk about how we want more personality in this sport, and I think Brad Keselowski, if you see that replay, you actually see his facial expressions. There was no covering it up.
No,
there was
he was hot.
There was no PC about that. He was because you know what he saw? He saw his championship hopes skirt right in front of him, and he almost. I mean, he's probably got the championship locked up as of walking into Homestead today.
He's got to finish 15th or better.
Right, and boy, I tell you what, when Gordon hit Bowyer, you don't think that flashed in his mind, and that had something to do with that statement.
Would have flashed in mine.
Oh yeah,
that and my life and everything else would have flashed right before my eyes.
You know, I mean, Kozlowski's had a lot of, you know, what Carl Edwards did at Atlanta and turned him upside down, and that was retaliation for another just racing incident. You know, Kozlowski's a little aggressive, but I'm not seeing anything that he's done that deserved the retaliation that Carl Edwards has displayed to him, especially turning him around. I can't remember what racetrack it was, but it was in the Nationwide race in front of the entire pack, and where his father was interviewed saying he's not going to kill my son.
Was it Dover? Because it had the inside wall too. There was no infield. It was just the.
I can't remember,
walls.
but it was pretty appalling.
Yeah,
you know, the tipping him upside down. Where would NASCAR have been had Kozlowski's car flew into the grandstands, or something off of Kozlowski's car flew into the grandstands and hit a fan?
Yeah,
or he risked a very good chance of being injured. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going 190, nearly 200 miles an hour. I think Atlanta's actually the fastest track. It's between Atlanta and Texas.
It was at that time before Michigan was repaved and some of these other tracks may be repaved. But yeah, Atlanta was one of the faster ones. But you know, they're. So let me ask you guys this then. Is there a little bit of recklessness because these cars are so safe? I know I've gotten your opinion on this before, but go ahead and tell me again.
I think when NASCAR came out here, what was it, a couple of years ago, Luke, and they said, you know what, we're going to let the boys have at it mentality come back.
Yeah.
I think they've gotten a lot more reckless, but I think they're letting them get a little bit more reckless to help bring the fans back and show that drama.
But is there more recklessness because the cars are so safe?
I think so.
I think so.
I absolutely. I mean, everybody's walking away pretty much unscathed in these new cars, and I've heard it talked about. So I absolutely agree that these guys figure, well, nobody's going to get hurt. You know, you're so much far more protected. I mean, I was at the Daytona 500 that we lost Dale Earnhardt. Had restricted area garage passes. I seen Dale Earnhardt the last 4 days he was alive, just like me to you. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I have a photograph of myself in the garage the day that he died. And I've gone and looked at the cars, like the car, and I was there when he won, you know, in '98. And that car's in Daytona, USA. And you look at that car versus the car tomorrow and cars of today, you know, whatever. And you wonder how they managed to not get hurt more. I mean, they thought those cars were safe. The sport has evolved to a point where I don't think these guys think they can hurt anybody. So they're just tearing up very expensive equipment and upsetting some car owners and sponsors.
When we come back, we're going to talk about that exact point, tearing up equipment unnecessarily. the Bowyer-Gordon incident wasn't the end of the drama at the day.
No.
There was more to come, and we'll talk about it when we return in Turn 3. This is The Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
You're listening to The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com.
Just 2 more turns to go as we head into Turn 3 on The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com. That's Karting with a K. I'm Dan Taylor, joined by my co-hosts Buddy Ray and Andrew Kozlowski, and joined in studio by special guest Luke Cochran. Luke, owner of Home Pride Companies, we've had a lot of conversations with you, and I'm going to hold off on what happened at the end of Phoenix, and I want to talk to you a little bit about being a sponsor on a dirt track level. We've had a lot of drivers who have talked to us about it, and we've had a lot of, I like to feel as kind of pointers for drivers. What do you look for in a driver when I'm sure you get flooded and inundated with drivers wanting you to sponsor them? What is something you look for to say yay or nay?
Well, and everybody that I've sponsored, I kind of create a format. First, there's guys that I sponsored that I respected, fellow racers that I raced against that I thought raced fairly clean, and if they came to me and asked me for something, I would pretty much grant that. There's a lot of racers out there that'll come to you and say, "Hey, I just want put your name on my car and give me some money." Well, you got to do more than that. You got to give them back something. You got to not do stuff such as what Jeff Gordon did. For starters, that's probably going to get you scolded by your sponsor. Though I must admit that in my previous racing career, I probably did a few questionable things on my own. But I secured some pretty decent sponsorship over the years. I had a pretty good deal that Pizza Hut sponsored me at one point in time, and what I presented them with, and this is the parameters that I put forth for other racers is I typically, when you're racing and you're racing at a local level, what ends up happening with a lot of guys, and I watch this happen a lot when there was a lot more racers out there, was you would start seeing these guys drop off at the end of the season, or they miss a week because the car's broke and they can't afford to fix it. People that are helping them on the car lose interest, yada, yada, yada. So what I did was I put forth a program for Pizza Hut to where they could pay me on a monthly basis. I would take the car to various different locations, a different one usually, pointed out by them every week. And it would always, attract attention, and it was working for them. And it was affordable because it wasn't one big lump sum. Most racers, myself maybe included, would probably spend it all, like a kid in a candy store. And now you're in mid to late August season. You got 3 to 4 weeks left in the season. You're out of money. You can't afford to buy tires. You can't. You might break a motor. Now it's like, what am I going to do? I don't have enough. And you're starting to miss races. Well, that's not what your sponsor is sponsoring you for. He's sponsoring you to be there every single week. So if you come forth to a sponsor, put together a plan. This is my advice to other racers. Put together a plan that is appealing to your sponsor and is affordable. If part of what you're doing for your sponsor includes uniforms for your crew or things such as that, wear the uniforms the minute you leave your shop. Don't just put them on when you get to the racetrack. You do the sponsor the most good, because you're stopping and getting fuel. You're maybe you're hitting McDonald's on the way or something like that, and everybody all dressed the same in the driver's uniforms gives them some more exposure.
That's interesting. That's one thing I'd never really thought about is wear the fire suit at all times because it's just more exposure for your
well, not necessarily the fire suit, but the driver uniforms.
Okay.
And identify yourself.
Yeah.
Wearing the driver's suit in the middle of the summer is a little difficult because it's a little warm.
A little warm, especially as last summer.
A little warm, but you do want to continue. So you don't always want to identify yourself. If you have sponsorship on your trailer, car, it's an open trailer. Most guys have enclosed trailers. I happen to really like an open trailer. I race an old vintage car now. I have an open trailer for it. It gets way more attention. I think that attracts more attention in an open trailer with a car on it than enclosed. Although that's whatever all of us wanted, in our racing careers, have an enclosed trailer. But if you have your sponsorship on the trailer, keep it clean. Don't have a dirty old trailer, and it doesn't take any time really to keep everything clean. Wash the car, do your best to make it look good out there, and if you happen to win, mention the sponsor's name. I see a lot of guys out there. They'll go up there and you can see it says something on the side of their car, and I won. Thanks to my kids, my mom, my dad, everything. Yeah, thank the sponsor.
We've been shocked at how many drivers we've had come on the show this year, and only one of them has thanked their sponsors.
Well, you got to if you want to keep that sponsor.
Excuse me, two of them, because Jack did come on and talk about Jack Dover did come on to be in the season and talk about his season.
Shane Hyatt being the other one.
Yeah.
Well,
so
and I'll be honest with you, what Jack does wasn't anything that I helped him with. I mean, Jack's actually had some I'm not going to say counseling, but some, I don't know, like a coach. He's been coached on how to, because my grand hopes for him, and I think, his parents and anybody that ever gets to know anybody that gets to know Jack Dover likes Jack Dover. Jack would be great out there in the in say Cup racing or NASCAR or something such as that. I don't know if he's ever going to get that opportunity because the opportunity isn't out there like it used to be.
Yeah. So
you have to take advantage of what you have, with at your disposal now, and it's kind of funny. I mean, Jack happens to be a neighbor, and they live up the road from me, and I've known him for a long. I'm kind of like his crazy uncle. He I've known him for a long time, and I've watched him. He's done very well in his career. It's always kind of been one touch away from really, really making it. And I actually became involved, not because he really asked me, because I always liked him, and I just kind of wanted to help him out. And I feel like, Michael Corleone in Godfather 3, just when I thought I was out, they dragged me back in. And now I'm as in love with racing as I ever was. I kind of stepped away from it for a while.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they keep that car clean. The guys wear the uniforms to the races. They wear them on the way to the races. They represent me in this particular case, the sponsor, very well, in my opinion. If he's ever getting interviewed, if he's in victory lane, which he gets to be in a lot of times, so he always mentions the sponsor. Myself and the co-sponsor on the car, which is Certified Transmissions, and that's what you got to do. You have to do that, and the program I've got him on is, keeps him racing. He's in Phoenix right now, getting ready to race the finale of the year for SCS, which is the Western World Championships. I'll be heading out there myself this weekend to watch. But he, every time he's ever asked, he mentions his sponsor. So my best advice to anybody out there, and if you find somebody that's a sponsor, work them into it a little bit slow. Don't go in there and, hey, give me 10 grand because I win and I'll give you a picture of the car. You give them, you got to sell them on the fact that sponsorship dollar is going to come back to them in some manner. The great thing about sponsoring race cars for me, or what I've discovered, is the loyalty of the fans and the other racers. I've done countless work for people that, don't even look for another estimate than they get one from us because we sponsor racing.
Yeah.
And
that's what you got to give them. You got to show them that they're going to get $1 back.
That was one question I was going to bring up was, at the NASCAR level, the major league sports, it's sponsorship. And that's what I was going to get to with you was just, how beneficial is it for the local business to sponsor the local guys? Instead of going to a big business, a big arena, what's the benefit of going to a dirt track level and sponsoring these guys?
Well, it depends on what it is that that particular sponsor does and how you can work into, if it's a service company, for instance, you can promote whatever service it is that they provide. It varies. It varies. And if you can, you just got to. The greatest thing about race cars is, even if you're not a race fan, even if you don't know anything about race cars, I make a point of looking for this, and this is one of the reasons I like open trailers so much. Is people, you just see everybody's head turned. They're always looking. They don't care what it is. If it's a race car, because they're lettered up and it's got a number on it, people are looking at it. Especially if it's like sitting in a parking lot somewhere. I mean, they just attract a lot of attention. So you got to put it out there to get the attention. That will bring back what it does for that sponsor.
Is it fair to say that you take a driver's reputation into consideration when doing sponsorship?
At this point in time, what myself and Home Pride is about, I'm interested in sponsoring champions.
Yeah.
I went to Jesse Sobbing, in fact, and Jesse didn't come to me, and confronted him about, hey, would you be interested in, doing something? He needs to, racers, if you can't do that for yourself, if it's not in your personality to go out and sell yourself and become a salesman, then you need to find somebody within your team that can potentially do that. If you want to have sponsorship. I mean, different races have different motivations. My motivation is I like as my company, I feel good about sponsoring people that are champions. Jack's a 3-time ASCS Midwest champion. He's past champion, 305 national champion, and everybody that knows anything about racing locally, if you ain't seen Jesse Sobbing and the Winner's Circle, then you haven't been to too many races.
We've heard of that guy a time or two on this show.
Never.
He had a part of my wrap on his car when he blew my wrap off at I-80.
Yeah.
Passed me so fast.
So many jokes right there.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, head into turn 4. We're going to wrap this baby up and wrap up the just before the last race of the season. So we'll be right back here on the front stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is the front stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Just one more turn to go, and the NASCAR boys are going to be thinking that in just a few short hours as the checkered flag on the 2012 NASCAR season will wave. We're about to get the checkered flag here at the front stretch, but we got a few more minutes left to talk to you. I'm Dan Taylor, joined by Buddy Ray and Andrew Kozlowski and special guest Luke Cochran. Luke, we appreciate you sitting in this morning and talking with us and giving some advice. Let's talk real quickly about the end of the race at Phoenix. The drama didn't end when the fight stopped. There was more drama left to be had. Green-white checkered finish coming to the white flag out of turn 4. I haven't heard much people say this, but Jeff Burton dumped Danica Patrick. Anybody agree with that?
I haven't heard that one.
Well, that's not how I seen it.
I didn't really see it like that either.
Yeah.
Do you think it was a racing accident? I think he dumped her.
I think they were pretty tight racing right there.
Yeah.
Was she losing fluid then?
No, I don't think so.
Who lost all the fluid?
I heard about the fluid loss.
It was her when she hit the wall.
Oh.
She hit the wall with the front of the car, and it was at that point when she pulled down and tried to keep going that she'd end up cutting a line or something like that. But she was going for a good finish. I don't know where she was at, but I think she was in the top 15. And she got wrecked again, whether it was Burton, whether it was in on purpose or not. She got wrecked, and NASCAR let him keep racing. And I thought immediately, as soon as I saw her wreck and the caution didn't come out, I thought they're kind of taking a page from the dirt track. Because a lot of times on the dirt track, they will wait for the field to get to the next set of turns before they'll decide to throw the caution, because a driver may get it refired and pull it off the track, and then there's no harm, no foul. But they didn't even throw the caution when the field got around to her. She had made her way through the front stretch, and I don't know why she didn't, but she didn't pull it down into the pits because she wanted to continue the race. She wanted to finish under power. If she'd have pulled down into the pits, NASCAR would have stopped her from going back out on the track and finishing the race. So she wanted to finish the race. Well, she dumps a bunch of oil in the middle of 3 and 4, on the exit of 4, along the front stretch, and out come the leaders. Harvick does one hell of a job to not wreck that car because he was wheeling it. He wanted to win. Comes across the line, gets himself his first win of the season. And the first win in 44 races, and we chalk up an 8th straight time Kyle Busch has led the most laps, but not won the race. God, how frustrating that must be.
That's like running second to Jesse Sabin every week. It gets irritating at times.
It's really, really not.
Or fifth or sixth.
I'd be happy to run second and end up on the same straightaway as Jesse in a B-Mod.
But for Kyle, I mean, he's led the most laps, 8 straight races, and not come away with a win. I mean, just think of how different the landscape would be if he would have won a couple of those. I mean, he'd have made it into the chase. He'd have been a contender. You know, it's insane to think how close he could have came to the chase, and he came very closely to the chase. But anyways, should NASCAR have thrown that caution when Danica was coming across, when there was havoc on the track? Should they have thrown the caution?
I think if they had realized that there was that much fluid on the track and what ended up transpiring, they probably wish they had now. Yeah. But in the same token, there was a long delay after that wreck. With Jeff Gordon and what have you, the crowd was kind of, and what a lot of people don't realize. I mean, Phoenix is notoriously a boring race. I've been to that race 8 times. It's boring. It's a track position race as a rule. I went last year because they had repaved it. I had been in Phoenix for a period of time doing some work down there, and they repaved it with what they're paving most of the roads with down there, which is a rubberized asphalt, there's recycled car tires in the asphalt. So I thought, hey, this is going to be great. Maybe there's going to be more than one groove. It's not going to be track position. The race is won and lost in the pits. Depends on how they get the driver back out there. It was exactly like that last year. So this year, obviously they had a little more action. But I think they were just trying to get the race over with. I think the fans were getting tired of sitting there. I think because there was a 15, 20-minute delay in that red flag. And
let's keep in mind that the team that eventually won the race was on the radio raising havoc with NASCAR because they threw the caution so fast when Gordon and Bowyer, or not so fast, but that they had ruled that Harvick had not taken the white flag before the caution had come out. The replay showed that they were absolutely right. He was just making it out of turn 4. He wasn't even halfway to the start-finish line when the caution came out, and then they complained that they didn't throw it fast enough after the race was over with. This is because
there's a big crash.
Yeah, and they were almost involved in it. But this is Turn 4, presented by Kozlowski Auto Parts, 50th and I Streets. Quality used parts at an affordable price. Get down to Kozlowski Auto Parts. Like I said, 50th and I Street. You can talk to Andrew about getting a whole litany of parts for your car or truck at much cheaper rates than you will get at an auto parts store, and it's going to be just as good a quality. It's going to come with a full lifetime warranty, correct, Andrew?
You bet.
50th and I Street, Kozlowski Auto Parts. You can get there today and get your car or truck back on the road. That was one heck of an accident at the end of the race. You talk about how Gordon's lucky that Bowyer, Logano, Almirola, none of those guys were actually hurt. NASCAR's lucky that Martin, Keselowski, Busch, Patrick, I can't even, all the cars that were involved in that. Ryan Newman was involved in that. Ryan Newman finished 6th, going across the start-finish line backwards. I mean, the cars that were involved in that and the hard hits some of those guys took, and the gals. I mean, Danica Patrick was up on top of another car for a while there.
Right.
I mean, they got pretty darn lucky that there wasn't some major injuries in that accident. So, Andrew, do you think they should have thrown that caution?
I think they were kind of... See, I still feel that most of that oil was still left on the track from Clint. Because I keep watching, I keep arguing with everybody. Where Kevin Harvick was coming out of turn 4, Danica never once hit that spot on the track. She trailed oil. We all saw it. But where that was, I don't ever remember the trucks going out there and cleaning Clint's stuff up because you saw how much oil came out of his car.
The cameras were on his crew at the time.
Exactly. So, I mean, the thing is, I still think that most of that oil was from Clint's car, but I think they were sitting there going, she's got turned around, she kept going, because she didn't really hit the front hard enough that she should have leaked anything.
Yeah.
So, I thought they did a fine job, but then again, they wrecked a lot of cars.
And that was basically Ryan Pemberton, the competition director's statement, was that the reports we were getting was that there was no oil on the track. And she was able to collect the car and get it going again, so we didn't feel it was necessary to throw the caution. I think when you hear a statement after the race, just like you said, Luke, I think they would have thrown it had they known the result of what happened and all the oil that ended up getting spilled on the track. But honestly, I think this is just like Watkins Glen, when they didn't throw the caution there, and we saw some of the most amazing racing between Brad Keselowski and Marcus Ambrose that last lap. And somebody said they ought to spray oil on the track the last lap of every race just to make it a little bit more fun. And I don't see much of a difference in this case. Anybody?
Well,
agree, disagree?
if you look at the grandstands, all the NASCAR races used to sell out. Yep. Daytona is at this point in time in jeopardy of potentially not being a sellout. You can watch the grandstands at all these races. They got to do something. The chase format when is the best thing that ever happened to NASCAR.
I love the chase format.
At first I hated it.
Every NASCAR person hates a change.
Yeah. Double file restarts. That's great. I hated that when I was racing. It's like, oh, please don't do that to us. Man, that just makes for better racing, gives you better opportunities. And also, sometimes you be the losing end of that opportunity. But when Kenseth won the championship the last year of the old format, he had the championship won with 4 races left in the year. Yeah. I quit watching.
Yeah.
And I'm as great a fan as there is.
And honestly, we've found a storyline that comes out of the chase all of a sudden, and it's the bubble talk. The 4 or 5 races before the chase starts, all of a sudden you're getting the bubble talk, and you're getting a battle within a battle. What was it? Dover was the race just before the chase started, correct?
Yes.
And the entire conversation was Kyle Busch and Jeff Gordon. Who's going to make it? Who's going to win? Who's going to make it into the chase? And they were doing it just like up at the top of the screen, right above the scrolling positions. It was how many points behind is Gordon? How many points ahead is Busch? And it gave you a little bit more of excitement, something else to kind of keep your eye on as the races unfold. So I think it's one of the best things that happened.
I recall Jeff Gordon making a statement with one more race left for the chase. Whoever he was racing behind, I can't remember who it was, but that he should have spun him out. There's just too much at stake to not make the chase.
Yeah.
He said, if I had to do over, I would have spun him. I don't even know. I can't remember who that was. So obviously he had it within him to be a dirty dog.
I think he's getting a little grumpy in his AARP age.
Yeah, happens when you get old.
Just to set the record straight, it was Richmond that was the last race before the chase. So not Dover, it was Richmond. But yes, we're pretty much out of time, guys. Let me get quick answers from you. Does Kozlowski hoist the trophy at the end of the night tonight?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
I don't want him to, but unfortunately, I think he's gonna.
And the thing is, I think he's going to be a good ambassador. I think he's going to be a good champion. And honestly, I think he's good for the sport. He's not your vanilla driver that sits up there and says, well, you know what? We had a good car. We had a good this. We had a good that. Thanks to my crew. Thanks to blah, 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 blah.
I've gotten to be a big fan of his.
Instead, you get stuff like this.
And I see bull like that.
When was the last time you heard Jimmy Johnson cuss?
You race hard, and I get called for racing hard. And
all right, Brad. All right, you can cuss
he's
all
a
you want.
wannabe. He's a wannabe Kyle Busch. He will never be as good as Kyle Busch.
Hell,
I don't know. He does I think he does a great job. I called him to win the championship at the beginning of the chase, and I'm not a Penske fan, and was never a Rusty Wallace fan. Which, as far as I'm concerned, the 2 cars, that's Rusty Wallace.
Yeah.
Then Mr. Kurt Busch, he became the driver of that car. I didn't like that either. Well, but Kozlowski is a real racer, come from real racing.
Yep.
I think he's going to hoist the championship, and because he's a smart racer, he's proven that he's a smart racer, and he came to this thing saying he wanted to win a championship, and all he has to do is finish 15th or better. I see him finishing probably far better than 15th or better.
Yeah.
But he's smart enough to at least finish 15th or better.
And I think he's going to be a good champion. I think he beat Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus at their own game. I think Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus got beat at their game by Paul Wolfe and Brad Keselowski. I said it 3.5 minutes ago, we've run out of time, and we have, so hopefully we don't go over too much more. But thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will be back next week to break down everything that happened at Homestead Plus preview 2013 and what we'll see in the offseason. Something to chew on. Dodge leaving NASCAR after today's race, and they're finally going to win a championship. After all of the years they've waited, they've struggled, and the year they're leaving, they're going to win a championship. Something to chew on today as you're watching the race. Thanks so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. Luke, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome in studio anytime. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have a great day, and hope you enjoy it. This has been The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.